Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. As a lot of websites nowadays use this skeleton loading instead of the traditional loading spinner. If we see it on youtube.com or booking.com, we see that a skeleton is used as a placeholder while the user is waiting for the data to load. And in this video, I will show you how you can build a generic React component for skeleton, which can be used as a placeholder for headings, content, components, or card loading. So if this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. Alright guys, so today's video is sponsored by Bright Data. Bright Data is an award-winning proxy network and a very powerful web scraper that can turn any website into structured data. I will show you how you can use it in your React application to fetch the data from any website later on in this tutorial. So I have already created my React app, and you can create your React app using npx create React app and the name of your application. So for me, the application name is React Skeleton. Now I am also running my application on the local environment. So you can just start your application using npm start because we already have scripts, which is the npm start into our package.json file. Alright, so this is pretty standard React application which we get using the CRA template. So we are not doing anything fancy here. The application is also running on the localhost 3000. So if we go to the browser, then we see that this is our application. Now I also have the other application which we are going to build. So this is how the application looks like. And if I reload, then you will see that we have the skeleton loading. And then once the data is available, we will show that data. So I'm going to refresh my page and you see that we have different skeletons loading. And once we have the data, we just remove the skeleton and load our data. All right, so this is what we are going to do. Now we are not going to create multiple skeletons. We are going to have a single generic component for the skeleton, and then we are just going to pass different props to it so that it will adapt based on the props. So now what we are going to do is let's go to the source folder, and inside the source folder I'm going to create a folder for the skeleton. So let's have a skeleton. All right, and now inside the skeleton I'm going to create another file which will be skeleton.js, and then we will also need to have a CSS file. So let's have a CSS file. All right, so now we have both the files, and now let's create a function component for the skeleton. So I'm going to have rsc, and this is going to give me a function component, and we will also import the CSS. So I'm going to have the import dot slash I will have the skeleton dot css. Now what we will do is we are going to take some props for the skeleton. So if we go and see, then the very basic prop will be that if we want to have a skeleton, we should have a width, height. So what we will do is we are going to accept the width and the height. So I'm going to have the width as a prop, and I will also have the height as a prop. Now there will be one more prop which I want to add, which is a variant, so that based on the variant it is going to behave differently. So I'm going to have the variant. Now what I will do is I'm going to create a style. So I will have a constant style, and to the style I'm going to have the width, whatever width I get, and then I'm going to have the height, whatever height I have. So this is a style constant which I've created. Now what this component is going to return is it is going to return a span, because we are going to create the skeleton as a span, and to this span we are going to give a class name. So let's have a class name as skeleton, and then we are going to pass the styles, whatever styles we have. So we have the style as a prop. One thing what we can do is we can have this variant. So what I will do is we can just use the variant, and then we can just have our class names. So we are going to have a backtick here, and then what I will do is I'm going to use the variant. So whatever variant is passed, I'm going to use the variant as, and this variant can be a paragraph, the variant can be a circle or a square, whatever it is. So we have this, and that's all. Now in the CSS file, what we are going to do is let's write some CSS for the skeleton. So first I'm going to have the skeleton. So I'm going to have this skeleton, and if we want to see something on the screen, we need to use this component in our app.js. So let's go to the app.js, and in the app.js what I will do is just below the header I'm going to use the skeleton as a component, And then I'm going to give the width. So let's have a width as 400 pixel, and then I'm going to give a height. I'm going to have 400 here. So I will have the quotes and we have the 400 here. Now if we go and if we see, then we should see something, but we don't see here anything. So if we go back here, and we're going to have the height as 400 pixel, so we will not still see anything, but we will have this space here. But now let's go and let's write the CSS for the skeleton. So I'm going to go to the skeleton here, and in this what we will do is we're going to have the border radius for our skeleton, because if we go here and if we see, then if I refresh it, then we see that we have a little bit radius here. So let's give the border radius. So I'm going to have the border radius as 2 pixel. Then we will use the display, as we are using the span. So we're going to have the display block so that we can have one skeleton next to each other. Then we can also give some line height. So I'm going to have the line height as 100%. We're going to use the width. So we're going to use the width, whatever width we get it. If we don't get it, we will have it as 100%. And then we need to give the background color. So let's have a background color, and I'm going to give the background color as FFF. Now what we will do is we need to have a background gradient. So if we go here and if we refresh, then you see that there is a gradient here. So let's create the gradient. So what I will do is I'm going to have CSS gradient generator, and here we have the CSS gradient generator, and let's generate the gradient. So we will have the color as hash E8 E8 E8, and I'm going to have it as 20. Then I'm going to have it as FA FA, and then here I'm going to change it as E8 E8 E8. All right, and this is going to be 60. So this is how we want the gradient, and we can also change this degree. So what I want is I'm going to change the degree to 100. So let's have this as 100 degree. So now I'm going to copy this. All right, let's go back to our Visual Studio Code and let's add this gradient. All right, so now we have the gradient, and what we can do is we can also give the position for the background. So I'm going to have a background position, and I'm going to give the position as 1000 pixel for the x-axis and 1000 for the y. All right, so we have this pretty simple skeleton. Now if we want to see, we can go and we can check here, and we see that this is how it looks, and you will see that we have this white color gradient here. Now we want this as an animation because this doesn't look nice. So let's go and let's add the animation. So I'm going to have the animation, and here you will see that the animation have some properties. So let's have the name as placeholder shimmer. We want to give the duration for our animation, which will be 1.5 second. We want to give the timing function, so we are going to keep it as linear. So let me have the linear delay. So I'm going to just remove it. We're going to give the iteration count. So I'm going to give the iteration count as infinite, and the direction, I'm not going to give any direction, and for the fill mode I'm just going to give forwards. So let's have the forward. So now we need to add the animation for this placeholder shimmer. So let's use the keyframes. So this is purely CSS animation. So I'm going to use the keyframes. So let's have the skeleton animation. All right. And then here what I will do is I'm going to have the @keyframes, and let's have our placeholder shimmer. So I'm simply going to copy and let it add it here. And now what we want is for 0%. So we are going to use the 0%. Then we need to do something, and for the 100% we need to do something. So I'm going to have the 0 and 100, and we are just going to change the background positions so that we get an animation there. So I'm going to have the background position, and we're going to have the background position start from 500 pixel negative, 0 for the y-axis, and then we are going to do plus 500 and 0 for y-axis. So this I will change it to plus 500 and 0 axis. And now what we will do is we are going to have the skeleton dot circle. So if we want to create a circle from this skeleton, then I'm going to just have to change the border radius, and I'm going to change the border radius as 50%. All right, now if we go and check, then we see that we have an animation, but there's something wrong. So if we go back, then here what we have done is instead of the background position, we have to give a background size. Now if we go and check, then we see that we have this smooth animation. So now our skeleton is ready. Now let's see how we can actually do the skeleton for all this templates. All right, so what I'm going to do is let's go back, and I'm going to go to the app.js. All right, and in the app.js, what I will do is I'm simply going to remove all this. We don't want it. All right, so I'm going to take the header, and I'm going to remove the complete header. And here what I will do is I'm going to have the h1, and this h1 I'm just going to have the React skeleton loading tutorial. And after that, what I will do is I'm just going to change this tutorial, and then what we will do is we are going to have a div, and the first thing we need to do is we are going to have this heading skeleton, content skeleton, and cart skeleton. So let me give a div, and inside the div I'm going to have the h2. All right, and to the h2 I'm going to have the heading skeleton. All right, we have the heading skeleton, and then what I will do is I'm going to have a div, and inside the div let's use the skeleton now. So I'm going to have the skeleton. I'm going to give the width as maybe 200 pixel. I'm going to give the height as 38 pixel because for h1 we have a 38 pixel height. All right, and then I'm going to have it this one. All right, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add two more skeletons for our h2 heading and h3 heading. So for h2 heading I'm going to change this to 150. All right, and for this one I'm going to change this to 28, and you will see that how I'm changing this 28 or heights. So if I go here and if I do an inspect element, then in the compute you will see that we have a height as 28. So that's how I'm just giving it as 28. For the h3 I'm going to give it as 100, and this will change to 25. All right, so now we have all the three, and I'm going to give a class here. So if we go here, then we see that these are not in the proper formatting. So what I will do is I'm going to give a class which will be a generic class, and I'm going to name it as skeleton block. So let me have the skeleton block. Now I'm going to give some css to this skeleton block. So I'm going to go to app.css, and in the end I'm just going to keep everything as it is, and here I'm going to add my skeleton css. All right, and what I will do is for the skeleton block I just need to add the box sizing. All right, I'm going to give the border box, and then I'm going to have the text align as left, and then whatever is inside the skeleton, for everything I'm going to give a margin so that we can have some space. So I'm going to give the margin as 30 pixel, and then for the headings I'm going to have the display as block. Similarly, if we have a skeleton and then we have a paragraph inside that, so what I will do is I'm going to have a dot paragraph. Then in that case what we will do is we are going to change the margin. So let's have the margin as 10 pixel, and then I'm going to change this to display as block. But we need to make sure that for the skeleton, if we go, we given a display property as inline block, so we need to make it as important so that it will just override. So I'm going to have it as important, and here also I will have it as important. Now if we go here, then now you will see that we have these three. All right, but they are two on the left hand side. So let's add some css to the app. So what I will do is we are going to have the app where we have the text align center. I'm going to give the width as 70%, and then I'm going to have the margin as auto so that we get it in the center. So we have this one. So now we have the skeleton ready for our heading. Now the next skeleton we will use it for the content skeleton. So let's build that. So what I will do is I'm going to go back here. All right, so I'm going to close this div. So here it is a div, and I'm going to close that. And next what I will do is I'm going to have a div where I'm going to have the h2, and I'm going to have a content skeleton. All right, so this is our content skeleton, and inside the content skeleton what we will do is we are going to have a div. So I'm going to give a div, and I will have a class name as maybe content block. All right, and inside the content block what we will do is we are going to have our skeleton for the content. So what I will do is I'm going to have a div. I'm going to give a class name as skeleton block. Oops, that should be block. And then what we will do is if we go here, we see that we have a content, so we're going to have a heading here, and then we can have some paragraphs here. So let's go and let's create that. So I'm going to go here and I will have the skeleton. So I'm just going to copy some. All right, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to copy. All right, so we have this, and now what we are going to do is for this one I'm going to keep it as 300, and for all the other skeletons what we will do is we are not going to give the width, we will occupy the width whatever it is available. So I'm just going to remove the width, and then I will just simply change the height. So I'm going to go and change the height as 20 pixel, and then we are also going to give the variant. So let's have the variant, and the variant will be paragraph. So I'm going to give a paragraph, and then for the last one I'm going to give the width as 50%. So let me have the width, and I'm going to give the width as 50%. All right, now let's go and check. So if we go and check, then we see that we have this one, but we need to add some styling to it so that we can have the grid like this. So what I will do is I'm simply going to copy. All right, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add it 2 times more, and then we're going to add the css to our content block so that we can have a grid. So let me have the content block. Now we will add css to this content block. So let's add the css. So I'm going to go here and then I'm going to add the css. this. So for the content block, it will be very simple. I'm going to use the grid. So I will have the display grid. We need to mark it important so that it can override our display inline for the skeleton. Then we are going to have the grid template columns, and we are going to give the template as 1FR, 1FR, 1FR. If you don't know about the CSS grid, then I have an entire tutorial on it. You can just click on the card above, or you can check the link in the description. We're going to give some gap. So let's have the grid gap. So I'm going to have the grid gap, and we're going to give the grid gap as 20 pixel, and then let's have the text align. So I'm going to have the text align as left. Now if we go and check, then we see that this is how our skeleton look like for the content selection. And the last one, we will give a try for our card selection as well. So let's quickly build that. So what I will do is I'm going to go back to my app.js. All right, I'm going to minimize this, and then here what I will do is I'm going to have a div, and inside the div I will have the h2 where I will have the card skeleton. All right, and then I'm going to have another div where I'm going to have a class, and I'm going to give the class name as card block. All right, and inside this we are going to add our skeleton. So first let's have a div. I'm going to give a class name for our card skeleton. All right, inside the card skeleton we are going to have a section. So first one will be the div. I'm going to have the card image skeleton, and inside the card image skeleton we are going to use our skeleton. So I'm just going to copy and I'm going to add it here. All right, this will be for the image. So I'm going to give the width as 80 pixel. I'm going to give the height as 80 pixel. All right, and then I'm going to use the variant as circle. So I want it in a circle form, so I will have it circle. And then next to the circle, if we go and check, next to the circle we want a text here. So let's have a paragraph here. So what I will do is I'm going to copy, I will add it here. We are going to have the width as 100%, so it should take all the width. I'm going to have the height as 20 pixel. All right, so I'm going to just remove this. All right, so this is our card image, and then what we will do is we are going to have the heading. So I'm going to have the card title. So let me have the card title. All right, I'm going to remove this. It will take 100% of the width, and this will be 30. And the last part will be the body of the card. So I'm going to copy this, I'm going to add it here, and this will be the card body skeleton where we are going to give a width. So let's have a width of 250 pixel, and then we are going to have a height of 300 pixel. So if we go here, then we should see something like this, but let's have a styling to it so that it will look a little bit nicer. All right, we are going to use the grid again so that we can have this. So what I will do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to have a card skeleton. All right, so I'm going to go here, I'm going to have the card skeleton. All right, and to this card skeleton I will have whatever inside this. I'm going to add the margin bottom of 20 pixel. Then we are going to have the card image. So I will have the card image skeleton. All right, and to the card image skeleton what I will do is I'm going to use the display. We're going to have the grid, we're going to have the template. So let's have the grid column template. I'm going to have 1FR, 2FR, and this actually I'm doing it for this one. So I need an image, and then I also need the text next to the image. So that's where I'm making it as a grid, where this will be the one section and this will occupy the two sections, which is the 2FR. Then we are going to have the align items, and we want the items to be aligned as center. Then we are going to have the justify items. We are going to keep it as baseline so that we get it in line. And then what we will do is we are going to have the gap, and let's have the gap as 10 pixel. If we go and check, so if I go here and I check, then we see that we have this. Now the next what we need to do is if we go here, then we have this card block and we need multiple cards. So we need to have it as a, so if I copy, if I add it 4 times, then we need to create the grid. So let's have this card block. All right, so I'm going to go here, I will have this card block, and then let's have a grid here. So I will have the display grid, and we need to have an important, we need to override it. All right, then we are going to have the grid template column. I'm going to use 1FR, 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 1FR. We need 4 columns. I will have the gap as 20 pixel. All right, and then let's have the text align as left. So I'm going to have the text align as left. All right, let's go and check. So if I go here, then you will see that we get this exact same skeleton. So if I go here, we see the skeleton, and here you will see that we have the exact skeleton. Now the next thing what we need to do is we need to get the actual content once the data is loaded. So what we will do is we are just going to mimic it. Now if we want to replace the skeleton with the actual data, then either we can use our own APIs or we can also fetch the data from any website across the globe without getting blocked. And this can be done using the Bright Data Web Unlocker solution. The Web Unlocker will take care of all the hard parts like browser fingerprinting, CAPTCHA resolving, IP rotating, and the most important for our project is the JavaScript rendering. It is a 3-in-1 web unlocking and a scraping solution and very easy to integrate into our project. It is just a 3-step solution where we can make a simple request to the target URL. The request will then pass to WebLocker and we receive the data in the form of an HTML or JSON, which we can easily parse into our React app and replace it with our skeleton. Let me show you how you can do it. You can just go to the Bright Data and create your account using the link below, and once you sign up you will get a $10 as a credit which you can use it in your account. And here you will see that we have created our proxy where you will see that we have the host, we have the username, password. You can also specify the IP addresses and target host. And once we have this, we will get a curl command which we can just use it and then we can fetch the data of any website. For the demo purpose, we are using this website. Now, if we want to integrate in our code, we can just click on check out the code and integration example. And here you will see that it's a type of API and we can use any of the language. So if you have a Java project, if you have a C#, you can choose based on the language you have. I'm going to choose Node.js. And here what I will do is in the advanced option, you can also choose the request promise or you can have the Axios. So I'm going to choose Axios. Now you can just copy this and you can put it in your code and then you can fetch the data from any website without getting your IP blocked. You can find all the links related to Bright Data in the description of the video. So I'm going to go here, and here what I will do is I'm going to have a use effect, and before the use effect let's create a constant loading state. So I'm going to have a loading state. All right, I will have the set loading state. All right, this will be equals to the use state, and then initially the value will be false. And then what we will do is let's have a use effect. So I'm going to have the use effect. All right, and to this use effect what we will do is we are going to use the set timeout. So let's have the set timeout. To the set timeout, what I will do is I'm going to have the set loading state. I'm going to make it as true, and then we need to give a timer. So after maybe 2 seconds I want to make it as true. All right, so this will show that after 2 seconds the skeleton will be replaced by the actual data. So we have this, and now let's give a try for our headings first. So what I will do is I'm going to go here. I will have the loading state. If this is true, then I need to load some JSX. If it is false, then I need to load another JSX. All right, but if it's false, what I want is I need to have my skeleton. So I'm going to cut this and I'm going to add it here. All right, and for this one I'm going to have a div, and then let's close the div. All right, so now if the loading state is true, then in that case we need to display the actual headings. So I'm going to have a div. I will have the class name as heading, and then let's have our h1 tag. So I'm going to have the h1 tag and I'm going to give it as heading 1. We're going to have the h2 and h3 as well. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to change it h2. This will become 3, and we are going to change this to 2, and this will become 3. So now if we go and if we see, then let me refresh it, then you will see that we have the skeleton loading, and then after the data is loaded, then we have the actual data. We can have similar for the content skeleton and for the card skeleton. So let's quickly do that. So what I will do is I'm going to have a constant function here. So I'm going to have a constant. I'm going to have the content block data, which will be an arrow function. And here, if we have the loading state true, then we need to do something else. We need to do something. So for the else part, we already have that we need to have our skeleton. So what I will do is for the skeleton, we have this 3 times. So we are going to use the map function. So here, what we can do is I'm going to have the return. So let me have the return, and here I'm going to use the spread array because I want it 3 times. So I will have 3. All right, I'm going to use dot map on that. I will have the item, I will have the index, and we are going to have the arrow function, and then we are going to return our JSX. So here what we will do is we are simply going to return our content. So here if we go, then what we will do is we have this content block, then we are simply going to return this. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to cut at it. All right, we can just remove this. We don't need to repeat our JSX. So I'm going to go till here and I'm going to remove everything. All right, so we have removed it. And now here what we can do is we can simply give our function name. So here we are going to have our content block data. And if we go here, then we need to add it here. So I'm going to have it here and I will save it. So if I go here and if I refresh it, then you will see that we have this. And once the data is loaded, this is removed. So let's have the data as well. So here we are going to have our data. So I'm going to copy this whole again. So I'm going to copy this. All right, I will go here, I will add it. And here what we will do is we need to add our data. So let's have a div. To the div, I'm going to give the key. Let's have the key as index, and here as well we need to give the key as index. So let's go and let's give the key as index. So I'm going to go here, I will have the key as index, and now here we need to add our actual data. So for our actual data, what I will do is I'm going to remove this. I'm going to have an h2 tag, then we are going to have a paragraph tag. So let's have the paragraph tag, and the data, I'm simply going to copy the data from here. So this will be the dummy data. So I'm going to copy, add the data here. I will go back, I'm going to copy and add the data here. Now let's give it a try. So if I refresh it, then you will see that we have this content skeleton and then we have the content data. Similarly, you can also do it for the card. Let's do it quickly. So what I will do is I'm going to go here and we are going to create one more function. So this will be the card block. So I'm going to have the card block data, which is going to be an arrow function. All right, we are going to have that if this is the loading state, then we need to do something else. We need to do something else. And for this else part, what we can do is we can have our similar thing. So I'm going to copy from here. All right, so I will just do a copy. All right, I will copy this and I'm going to add it here. And since this is having 4 columns, so I'm going to change this to 4, and let's have the actual skeleton. So if I go, then we are going to take this card skeleton. All right, I'm going to cut this. I will delete the other. I will delete this as well, and I will delete this as well. And in the card block, we are just going to call our function. So we are going to have the card block data. Now we can add this. So what I will do is I'm going to go up and we have this card block data. So I will take this and I will just replace this. All right, so this is our card block data. If we go and if we check, so let me refresh it, we still see that we have all the 4 cards, but we don't have the data. So let's add the data as well. So it's not too much, we will just do it quickly. So I'm going to copy this whole. Okay, so let me copy this. All right, I will add it in this loading true. I will save it, and we have this. If this is loading true, then in that case what we will do is we are going to have the card. All right, then we are going to have the card image. All right, we need to give the image. So let me have the image. We are going to give the source, and we are going to use the source as logo. Let's have the alt tag. So for the alt tag, I'm going to give it as logo. We're going to have the width, we're going to have the height. I'm going to remove the variant. All right, and for the text, I'm going to have a div. So let me have a div, and I'm going to close the div. Oops, I misspelled the div. So let me have the div, and to the div, what we will do is I'm simply going to add the React app. All right, so we have this one, and then for the title, what we will do is we're going to change this as a title. So I'm going to copy the title from the above. So let's have the same title. So I'm going to copy, then we can add the title here. So this is all dummy data I am putting it, so you can just replace this with the actual data when you actually have it. And then we are just going to have a paragraph tag here, and in the paragraph tag we are just going to add the lorem ipsum text. So, all right, now let's go and let's check. So if I refresh it, then we see that we have this, and we can just add some CSS to this one. So what I will do is let's go on top. We have this card image, so I'm going to take the card image and I will have the CSS same as my, where is my card? Okay, so I'm going to have this same, so I will add it here, and then I'm going to have a dot here. And apart from that, for the card image, I will also add the background to this card image. So let's go in the bottom, and here I'm going to have some additional CSS, which will be that I need a background of #000, which is a black color, and then I'm going to have a border radius of 50%. So it will be a circle, and then it will have an logo inside it. So I'm going to go back. Oops, I made some mistake. So it should be border radius 50%, but it should be to the card image. So we have this. Now if I refresh it, then you will see that we have this beautiful skeleton loading, and then we are just changing it with the actual data. So this is a more modern way to have our loading screen, which you will always find it on the YouTube or any of the popular websites, instead of having the traditional loading spinner and then you have the data. So we just created a generic component and then we used it based on our requirements. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also follow me on Twitter for latest updates, and before you go, don't forget to subscribe the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.